And later Google realized they had to, manually change certain elements of the ranking algorithm and manually insert and have, layers that inserted content into the search results. And the same with YouTube, and then the same with Twitter. And so, this technology, this, AI technology isn't going to be any different. There's going to be gamification by publishers. There's going to be gamification by, folks that are trying to feed data into the system. There's going to be content restrictions driven by the owners and operators of the algorithm because of pressure they're going to get from shareholders and others. TikTok continues to tighten what's allowed to be posted because community guidelines keep changing because they're responding to public pressure. I think you'll see the same with all these AI systems, and you'll probably see government intervention in trying to have a hand in that one way and the other. So, I don't think it's going to be... So you feel
they should have some responsibility is what I'm hearing, because they're doing this...
Yeah, I think they're going to end up inevitably having to, because they have a bunch of stakeholders. The stakeholders are the shareholders, the consumers,
advertisers,
the publishers, the advertisers. So all of those stakeholders are going to be telling the owner of the models, the owner of the algorithms, the owner of the systems, and saying, here's what I want to see and here's what I don't want to see. And as that pressure starts to mount, which is what happened with search results, it's what happened with YouTube, it's what happened with Twitter, that pressure will start to influence how those systems are operated. And it's not going to be this let it run free and wild system.
There's
and by the way, that's always been the case with every user-generated content platform, right? With every search system, it's always been the case that the pressure mounts from all these different stakeholders. The way the management team responds, ultimately evolves it into some editorialized version of what the founders originally intended. And, editorialization is what media is. It's what newspapers are. It's what search results are. It's what YouTube is. It's what Twitter is. And now I think it's going to be what all the AI platforms will be.
Sachs, I think there's a pretty easy solution here, which is bring your own algorithm. We've talked about it here before. If you want to keep your Section 230 a little surgical, as we talked about earlier, I think you mentioned the surgical approach. A really easy surgical approach would be here's the algorithm that we're presenting to you. So when you first go onto the For You, here's the algorithm we've chosen as a default. Here are other algorithms. Here's how you can tweak the algorithms, and here's transparency on it. Therefore, it's your choice. So we want to maintain our 230, but you get to choose the algorithm, no algorithm, and you get to slide the dials. If you want to be more extreme, do that, but it's you're in control, so we can keep our 230. We're not a publication.
Yeah, so I like the idea of giving users more control over their feed, and I certainly like the idea of these social networks having to be more transparent about how the algorithm works. Maybe they open source it. They should at least tell you what the interventions are. But look, we're talking about a Supreme Court case here, and the Supreme Court's not going to write those requirements into a law. I'm worried that the conservatives on the Supreme Court are going to make the same mistake as conservative media has been making, which is to dramatically rein in or limit Section 230 protection, and it's going to blow up in our collective faces. And what I mean by that is what conservatives in the media have been complaining about is censorship, right? And they think that if they can somehow punish big tech companies by reducing their 230 protection, they'll get less censorship. I think they're just simply wrong about that. If you repeal Section 230, you're going to get vastly more censorship. Why? Because simple corporate risk aversion will push all of these big tech companies to take down a lot more content on their platforms. The reason why they're reasonably open is because they're not considered publishers. They're considered distributors. They have distributor liability, not publisher liability. You repeal Section 230, they're going to be publishers now, and they're going to be sued for everything, and they're going to start taking down tons more content. And it's going to be conservative content in particular that's taken down the most, because it's the plaintiff's bar that will bring all these new tort cases under novel theories of harm that try to claim that, conservative positions on things create harm to various communities. So I'm very worried that the conservatives on the Supreme Court here are going to cut off their noses to spite their faces.
They want retribution, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. The desire for retribution is gonna cause them.
Totally. The risk here is that we end up in a Roe v. Wade situation where instead of actually kicking this back to Congress and saying, guys, rewrite this law, that then these guys become activists and make some interpretation that then becomes confusing, Sachs, to your point. I think the thread the needle argument that the lawyers on behalf of Gonzalez have to make, I find it easier to steelman Jason how to put a cogent argument in for them. which is, does YouTube and Google have an intent to convey a message? Because if they do, then, okay, hold on. They are not just passing through users' text, right? Or a user's video. And Jason, what you said actually, in my opinion, is the intent to convey. They want to go from this video to this video to this video. They have an actual intent and they want you to go down the rabbit hole. And the reason is because they know that it drives viewership and ultimately value and money for them. And I think that if these lawyers can paint that case, that's probably the best argument they have to blow this whole thing up. The problem, though, with that is I just wish it would not be done in this venue. And I do think it's better off addressed in Congress, because whatever happens here is going to create all kinds of, David, you're right. It's going to blow up in all of our faces.
Yeah. Let me steelman the other side of it, which is I simply think it's a stretch to say that just because there's an algorithm that is somehow an editorial judgment by, Facebook or Twitter, that somehow they're acting like the editorial department of a newspaper. I don't think they do that. I don't think that's how the algorithm works. I mean, the purpose of the algorithm is to give you more of what you want. Now, there are interventions to that. As we've seen with Twitter, they were definitely putting their thumb on the scale. But Section 230 explicitly provides liability protection for interventions by these big tech companies to reduce violence, to reduce sexual content, pornography, or just anything they consider to be otherwise objectionable.
True.
It's a very broad, what you would call Good Samaritan protection for these social media companies to intervene to remove objectionable material from their site. Now, I think conservatives are upset about that because these big tech companies have gone too far. They've actually used that protection to start engaging in censorship. That's the specific problem that needs to be resolved, but I don't think you're going to resolve it by simply getting rid of Section 230. If you do
your
that—
Your description, Sachs, by the way, your description of what the algorithm is doing is giving you more of what you want is literally what we did as editors at magazines and blogs.
This is
studied the audience.
Intent to convey.
We literally, your description reinforces the other side of the argument. We would get together, we'd sit in a room and say, hey, what were the most clicked on? What got the most comments? Great. Let's come up with some more ideas to do more stuff like that so we increase engagement at the publication. That's the algorithm replaced editors and did it better. And so I think the Section 230 really does need to be rewritten.
Let me go back to what Section 230 did, okay? You got to remember, this is 1996, and it was a small, really just few sentence provision in the Communications Decency Act. The reasons why they created this law made a lot of sense, which is user-generated content was just starting to take off on the internet. There were these new platforms that would